Welcome back to Point Click Repeat. We are here for the final act in Dagger of Amon. And if you recall, we just outran a murderer, and then our good friend Rex took a bite out of crime and trapped him in his spot. And we were able to unmask him, but we, the audience, don't get to see what Laura saw. And we're moving on to Act 6. Now, Act 6 is essentially a denouement, which will make sense shortly. Let's get to it.
So far, so good. Keep it up.
Thank you for coming to this inquest, Miss Bow. As the coroner on this case, I'm going to informally question you and study the evidence you've collected. If you assist me in developing a case, the perpetrators will be tried in the formal court of law.
Perpetrators.
We're primarily concerned with the museum murders, but we're also interested in the theft of the Dagger of Amon and other matters that may have a bearing on this case. My examination of the corpses has been fruitful, but I need more evidence to build a case. Any information you can give us would help, but you must justify your conclusions with the evidence you've acquired. False accusations and unsupported conclusions will not be tolerated. Although I don't wish to pressure you, your employer is also here to judge your performance on this investigation. Since this is an informal proceeding, I've allowed it on the basis that your newspaper will cooperate with our wishes. Now, to the questions. Who murdered Dr. Pippin Carter?
Here we go. Okay, so this is basically what this act is just you answering questions about what you encountered throughout the game. Now, what he was saying about needing the evidence to support it, that's essentially what a lot of the items we are picking up along the way have to do with. I can't say exactly which ones tie with which ones. There's stuff like Yvette's shoe, the grapes, the Ankh, things that we picked up but didn't use, basically, are all things that are evidence. Now, I believe that if you don't have certain objects, even if you get all the questions correct, you still won't get the perfect ending. I think there's 3 different endings, but I honestly can't recall. All I know is there's definitely a bad ending and definitely a good ending. So we're going to answer all these questions incorrectly to show you what the bad ending is. So, and as I go through them, if you like, you can see if you have an idea what the correct answers are before I go through all the correct ones at the second go-around. But for now, we're just gonna go through and get them all wrong, so that we see what happens if you are a bad detective, even though you're a reporter. So let's say Olympia killed him. Oh yeah, and then we need a motive. Had a bad day.
Who murdered Lawrence Ziggy
Moited.
Ziegfeld?
I think he killed himself. Because he has mental
Who
deficiency.
murdered Ernie Leach?
Ernie Leach. Ernie Leach was definitely killed by Steve Dorian because of jealousy. Because I had an eye for him.
Who murdered Yvette Delacroix?
That was me. I can't choose me. Just kidding. Let's say the Countess. And the reason was she's a professional
Who
killer.
murdered Countess Lavinia Waldorf Carlton?
That was Yvette. For revenge, because she killed her.
Who was the skeleton found in the steamer trunk?
That skeleton was Detective O'Reilly.
Who actually stole the Dagger of Amon from the Ancient Egypt exhibit?
Who stole it? It was probably Ramses, because he was pissed about Egypt.
Who was the woman involved in stealing paintings from the Old Masters Gallery?
Let's see, the woman involved in stealing the paintings, that was Wolf.
Based on our own investigation, your conclusion is incorrect, Miss Bow. 2 of the men who were murdered were involved with one of the female victims in a plan to steal the paintings. We have a report on that woman telling us she appeared at an appointment in the medieval armor exhibit sometime after the party. She was unaware that her partner in crime was dead at that point, and she was seen carrying paintings. If she'd been confronted at that time with evidence that her partner was dead, she might well have confessed to her crime. Who is the high priest of the Amon-Ra sun worshippers?
So there you go. So I got those questions wrong, and so the coroner actually gives you some hints, to try and let you get it correct next time if you try again. Who's the head of the Amon-Ra cult? That was definitely Dr. Carrington.
That accusation is false, Miss Buck.
Ah, dang.
However, the high priest's identity is a carefully guarded secret, so your failure to identify him is nothing to be ashamed about. He was present at the museum party, but was rarely seen afterwards. One witness said he was spotted briefly in the office of Yvette Delacroix. Which museum employee runs a fencing operation as a sideline business?
Let's say Dr. Tut.
Incorrect, Miss Bow. If I were you, I would have looked through the garbage in people's offices. Trash cans
okay.
are often a good source of clues. Miss Bow, please remember in the future that you're a reporter, not a detective. By interfering at crime scenes, you make it much more difficult for the police to do their jobs.
It's true.
Not only are your conclusions based on unfounded guesswork, you don't even have any evidence to back them up. By your presence at the murder scenes and your destruction of evidence, I'm tempted to conclude that you were the murderer.
Uh-oh.
You neglected to thoroughly question all the suspects, and you missed important evidence at the crime scenes. Although you discovered the Dagger of Amon-Ra, you have not arrived at conclusions about the theft that make any sense to me. I believe the theft involved two people, one of whom must have been on the museum staff. Because of you, a murderer is running loose in this city, free to kill again. I hope you're proud of yourself, Miss Bow.
Well, maybe the police should do a better... Aww. Everyone's mad. Laura Bow bungles investigation. Dagger's still missing. Killer goes free. Wait,
Since
Dagger's
his
still missing.
skeleton was so nicely cleaned by the domestic beetles, Dr. Carrington's bones will soon be hanging on display in the Leyendecker Museum. Yvette
there's a
Delacroix
clue.
died plastered. Her remarkably lifelike statue now lives on in the Old Masters Gallery of the Leyendecker Museum. Her memory lives on in the minds of all she touched. Her sculpture is attributed to artist unknown. Dr. Pippin Carter, wherever he is quite displeased. You did not recover the Dagger of Amon-Ra, nor did you find his murderer. Therefore, Pippin feels it is only fair that he should haunt you for the rest of your life.
Oh, okay. I have a ghost now.
Indirectly, as a result of your total failure, Wolf Heimlich was fired from his job as Chief of Security at the Leyendecker Museum. 1 year later, still out of work, he committed suicide in military fashion by falling on his sword. Having died in the course of this story, Watney Little's life of crime came to an abrupt end. As he was not a nice man, nobody missed him. After Wolf Heimlich was fired from his job as Chief of Security, Dr. Olympia Miklos moved to Montana to do full-time field research in paleontology, digging in the rich fossil beds she found there. Her greatest find was the carnivorous Olympiasaurus dinosaur. As fond as he was of the Leyendecker, Ernie Leach noted in his will that he wanted his body donated to the museum. His body now resides in numerous small jars of alcohol, which will be placed on display in the new Hall of Internal Biology, adjacent to the Hall of Late Mammals. Since the Dagger of Amon-Ra was not recovered, Dr. Patasheptut
It was, though.
Tut
I have
Smith
it.
was forced to commit suicide with a
Oh my
fake
God.
Dagger of Amon-Ra from the Leyendecker Museum gift shop.
It's brutal.
After losing his head in the museum, Ziggy found himself unable to continue his criminal career. His head has been preserved and is now on display in the Life Mask exhibit at the Leyendecker Museum.
That's pretty...
Ramses Najir
It's creepy.
continued his successful career as an accountant and as head of the secret Egyptian cult of Amon-Ra. With his strong high society ties, his accounting business made Ramses a millionaire in 15 years. Having died from a snake bite, the Countess Lavinia Waldorf Carleton did not live long enough to inherit any money from her last husband, Sterling.
Oh.
Extremely unimpressed by your total failure as a reporter, Sam Augustini fired you. Later that same year, he was mugged with a gift shop duplicate of the Dagger of Amon-Ra and died from his wounds. He blames you for his death.
Oh, God, I'm sorry.
Since you were fired after your total failure at the museum, Court Fuller T. Rhubarb continued the investigation, found the Dagger of Amon-Ra and the murderer, and won a Pulitzer Prize for his excellent work.
Well, good for him.
Henri Lemore, the coroner, continued his successful career studying dead bodies for the next 50 years, finally retiring in 1976 to tour with a rock band, the Ungrateful Dead.
Wait a minute. Henri?
Low-fat continued in the laundry
He sounded
business,
very New York, not
eventually opening a chain of low-fat Chinese laundries across the country and becoming a millionaire in the process. Detective Ryan Hanrahan O'Reilly continued in his job and became a full-time homicide detective. Having amassed a small fortune by being frugal, he retired to Ireland 3 years later. Steve Dorian was quite upset by the unfortunate event that happened to you later that night.
What do you mean?
Stunned by your total failure and the unfortunate event that occurred to you later that evening, John Bowes spent his remaining years in a New Orleans mental institution.
Oh no, my dad went crazy?
After you gave it away, the Dagger of Amon-Ra vanished. 20 years later, in 1946, it mysteriously appeared on the doorstep of the Cairo Museum in Egypt. There was human blood on the blade, as if it was some kind of a message.
Oh, I see. Well, at least we found a place to sleep. Uh-oh. Hey, get out of here.
You had your chance and you blew it, Lorabo. This is what happens to interfering reporters.
It was the narrator all along. Jesus. That's so brutal. Which unloads an automatic rifle on me while I'm sleeping. Yeah, so that's the bad ending, in case that wasn't clear. It is interesting they just have the narrator voice that character, because they don't want to give away the answer, as it were. Oh boy, I can't skip this, can I? Oh no, no! I don't want to marry an archaeologist. I'm gonna see if I can get out of here. If I can't, I'm just gonna skip this for the video. We're gonna go back to our save point and see how we do with the correct answers. So we'll stay tuned. Alright, welcome back. Just had to sit through those credits and then reload my save. So we're back in the Corners Inquest, and we're going to get everything correct. So
far, so good. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to this inquest, Miss Bow. As the coroner on this case, I'm going to informally question you and study the evidence you've collected. If you assist me in developing a case, the perpetrators will be tried in the formal court of law. With primarily any information, although I don't wish to pressure you, who murdered Dr. Pippin Carter?
Here we go. Okay. To the actual questions. Now, before we go through this, I will say, I think if you get some of these questions wrong, he also doesn't ask certain other questions, so I was kind of hoping you could see all the questions and, you know, come to your own conclusions if you like, before I go through them all, but of course some of those questions weren't present in that run because I got so many wrong. So we're going to go through them correctly, so spoilers from here on out, in case you still wanted to try and solve it yourself. So yeah, I mean, Detective O'Reilly is basically the mastermind of all of this. He's the one who killed pretty much everybody. You know, I did kind of wish there was a bit more nuance to some of them, especially with Pippin Carter, the first murder that you find. You have the Ankh and the woman's footprint right next to it that are both, I guess, just red herrings, or purposefully placed there by Detective O'Reilly to throw you off. But there would have been something kind of cool if he had, you know, Yvette as an accomplice, and then he killed her because he got jealous, that kind of thing. But alas, he was the one who killed Carter. And the reason, I think there's actually two options you can do here. I think cover another crime and financial gain are both acceptable for the game. We're going to say financial gain. Now, I guess I can kind of go through what the story is, because it doesn't really tell you, like, overtly. So basically, Detective O'Reilly was getting fed up with the life as a detective. He has that conversation with Yvette earlier where he's like, I've seen it happen all the time. A cop does the right thing for so long and he gets sick of it. And he goes sour. So that's what happened to him, is he basically was getting fed up with the way things were going, and he just decided to turn to a life of crime, to go dirty. So he discovers that Dr. Carrington has been appointed the new head of the Leyendecker Museum, and nobody has seen him before. So he thinks of an idea to release this character, Watney Little, the police file that we found. He like sets it up so that he can escape from prison, kill Dr. Carrington on his way to America, and then assume his identity. So that was the very first scene that we see on the boat. It's Watney Little killing Dr. Carrington, putting him in the trunk, and then assuming his identity. Now, this all would have went off without a hitch, except Dr. Carter, the first death in the Mummy, he's the only one of the cast that had met Dr. Carrington, the real Dr. Carrington, before. And, he seemed not too concerned about it. He was like, he didn't seem to recognize me, and he looked very different from what I remember. But from what I understand, Detective O'Reilly found this out and basically was like, it's too risky to leave Dr. Carter alive because he could discover the truth about Watney Little and blow the whole operation. So that's why he killed Dr. Carter. Now, Detective O'Reilly also had some accomplices working with him on this. Ziggy was one, and the Countess was the other. Now, the Countess was just had her late husband die, and she's kind of the whole what's the word? She wants his money. She wanted the money of her ex-husband, her late husband. And she was sidling up to Dr. Carrington now as well, to basically, try and get that going. And they started running some other things on the side, like the painting forgeries and that kind of thing. But they were accomplices. Watney Little, as Dr. Carrington, is the one who stole the dagger from the display case because he had the access to it now. So, anyway, we're going to go through each of these and explain a bit more. But it was for, either to cover another crime, which is the whole Watney Little thing, or for financial gain to kind of make sure that the money he's going to make from the dagger won't get revealed.
Who murdered Lawrence Ziggy Ziegfeld?
And that would be Detective O'Reilly. And in this case, it is to cover another crime. And, basically he started, once he killed Carter, he kind of goes a bit nuts and starts killing all his accomplices, all the people on his side, to cover all his crimes, to make it seem like, or to avoid people squealing on him, essentially. So.
Who murdered Ernie Leach?
And so Ernie wasn't an accomplice, but he has that moment where he's talking to Yvette, I believe, and he says, I saw something I probably shouldn't have. And, later on we find that the dagger is in the warthog container, and then Ernie is killed seemingly by being drowned in the warthog container. So my understanding is the dagger was stored in the gift shop that we found right near the beginning when we were at that party, just among the fake ones, as like a way to hide it before it can be smuggled out. But then, maybe because you find it, maybe just because they got a little scared, he moved it down into the vat with the warthogs. And I believe Ernie spotted him doing this. He at least spotted him messing around with the warthog container. And so I'm pretty sure he waited until Ernie was also looking in the warthog container, and he shoved him in. So anyway, once again, this is Detective O'Reilly. And once again, this is to cover another crime.
Who murdered Yvette Delacroix?
And this one's a bit different. Basically, it still was Detective O'Reilly. He's the murderer. He's the fucking guy. But this time, it's not to cover another crime. It's actually just jealousy. Straight up jealousy. She had nothing to do with his crime, the theft of the dagger, any of the murders. She was just a bit of a amorous woman, and he was into her, and she, said she was with him. She said she was with a lot of people, but, basically he found out she was fooling around with other dudes, and he just flew into a jealous rage and killed her and plastered her. So it was just a jealousy thing for poor Yvette.
Who murdered Countess Lavinia Waldorf Carleton?
Once again, this is O'Reilly, and it was to cover another crime. Again, this is just him covering his bases, trying to kill all the people who knew about the Watney Little situation, and the theft of the dagger, basically.
Who was the skeleton found in the steamer trunk?
All right, and so that's a pretty easy one. We see him get killed right in the beginning. We find the watch. It all comes together, but that skeleton was the real Dr. Carrington.
Who murdered Dr. Archibald Carrington?
So in this case, it's actually Watney Little, because we see that at the very beginning.
Who impersonated Dr. Archibald Carrington?
Pretty straightforward. It's the same guy, Watney Little.
Who murdered Watney Little?
So Watney Little is the one who actually got porcupined. And once again, it's Detective O'Reilly, wouldn't you know it? And it's to cover another crime. It's basically to stop him from revealing all the secrets. I'm not actually Dr. Carrington, I'm Watney Little.
Who actually stole the Dagger of Amon-Ra from the Ancient Egypt exhibit?
So this is a little tricky because it's Watney Little, but it's impersonating Dr. Carrington. But we need to choose Watney Little, not Dr. Carrington.
Who manipulated Watney Little into stealing the Dagger of Amon-Ra?
Ha, see. It was Watney Little who actually stole it physically, but it was O'Reilly who spearheaded the whole thing. He's the one who got him to do it, so that's why we need to choose that for this one.
Who was the woman involved in stealing paintings from the Old Masters Gallery?
That's a pretty easy one. Based on what we saw in the game, we actually confronted her, and it was the Countess.
Based on what we now know, your assumption is correct, Miss Bow. Good work. Who was the man involved in stealing paintings from the Old Masters Gallery?
Now this is tricky because we find the note on Dr. Carrington's desk that says Countess and Ziggy in the armor room, and that's who she's going to meet. Or that's who he's going to meet, is those two. Now Ziggy's already dead, and of course Watney Little as Dr. Carrington is already dead, but the Countess doesn't know that. That's why she's the only one who shows up at that time. But the man involved is actually Watney Little. There's another question coming right up.
Based on what we now know, your assumption is correct, Miss Bow. Good work.
Good work.
Who was the middleman who provided forged paintings for the Countess and sold the real ones for her?
So there you go. So that's where Ziggy comes in. So Ziggy was the one who would actually bring the forged paintings in, take the sold one, or take the real ones, and then sell them off on his own outside of the museum. So that's why Watney Little was meeting both the Countess and Ziggy. It was to, complete another transaction. But little did she know, two of them were dead. But Ziggy is the middleman.
Based on what we now know, your assumption is correct, Miss Bow. Good work.
Good work.
Who is the high priest of the Amon-Ra sun worshippers?
This one always bugged me because you promise him that you won't tell about his thing, but if you don't, you'll be wrong. So we know it's Ramses.
That's correct, Miss Bow. You're very observant.
Thank you.
Which museum employee runs a fencing operation as a sideline business?
Finally, this is a fairly easy one. This is Ernie. The whole thing with Ice Pick and the charcoal note that you find in the trash bin in Yvette's office says, Ice Pick wants you to fence for him, or whatever it was. I can't remember what it said. But Ernie Leach is the fence.
That assumption is correct. Mr. Leach was moonlighting with his own business as a fence installer. In fact, he put up a very nice fence around my house.
I
Wah,
have
wah.
one final piece of evidence to present, Mr. Coroner. I have an eyewitness who would only feel safe to come forth if I established my case against Mr. O'Reilly. Now that I've done so, let me introduce Dr. Patah Shep-Tut Smith of the Cairo Museum.
Here we go. This only happens if you get all the answers
Mr.
correct, I
Smith's
believe.
testimony is safe with us.
Many thanks. I was in the Egyptian ceremonial room, underneath the museum, when Detective O'Reilly killed 2 of my fellow sun worshippers. I saw with my own eyes how he gunned them down without mercy when they tried to stop him from chasing Miss Bow. However, we only managed to slow him down. His hood fell back briefly, revealing his evil face to us as he slaughtered our people. That son of a camel should not be allowed to run free upon the sands.
Will you testify in court to what you witnessed, Mr. Smith?
Happily, sir. My dead fellows expect their revenge, although Amon-Ra will certainly destroy O'Reilly's car when he journeys through the underworld.
I'm not qualified to give my opinion on Mr. O'Reilly's spirit in the next world, Mr. Smith, but I'm sure your testimony will help your dead friends sleep peacefully. Thank you for coming forth. I must admit that I'm impressed by your methods, Miss Bow. Not only have you identified the murderers of those unfortunate individuals, but you have also uncovered the skullduggery involving the Dagger of Amon-Ra. Our case is very strong now and prosecution can begin. The New York Police Department owes you a debt of gratitude for your assistance in apprehending these malefactors. I'm sure that a commendation of valor from the police department is in order. Thank you for your help.
Yay, we did it! Laura Bow solves dagger theft and museum murders.
It's all that lousy reporter's fault.
There's O'Reilly.
Damned interfering Laura Bow.
They didn't really make him look like O'Reilly. Like he
Thinks
doesn't
she
have red
can
hair.
get away with squealing on me, does she? Well, she's got another thing coming.
No, I don't. You're in prison. Shut up.
Do you hear me, Laura Bow? You'll pay for this. If it's the last thing I ever do.
Oh boy.
Thank you for waiting,
Steve.
Laura.
I didn't mind, Steve.
Laura,
Yes?
would you mind? Do you suppose... Laura, could you close your eyes? I have something for you.
Oh, I suppose so.
What the?
Oh, Steve!
Do you like it?
Steve, how could you? How could you have stolen the dagger?
I didn't steal the dagger, Laura. I bought this copy for you at the museum gift shop. I thought you might like a
silly me.
memento of your big night at the Leyendecker Museum.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I'm so embarrassed.
You're beautiful when you blush. Laura,
Yes, Steve?
would you consider joining me for dinner this coming Saturday?
Well, I'm not sure if I don't know if I should really. Yes. Yes, I'd be delighted to join you for dinner.
Thank you, Laura. You've made me very happy.
Oh, Steve.
Oh, Laura.
Oh, Steve.
Oh god. There's your happy ending, Laura. Get the hunky stevedore. And we should get recaps for everybody as well, just like last time.
Since his skeleton was so nicely cleaned by the domestic beetles, Dr. Carrington's bones will soon be hanging on display in the Leyendecker Museum. Yvette Delacroix died plastered. Her remarkably lifelike statue now lives on in the Old Masters Gallery of the Leyendecker Museum. Her memory lives on in the minds of all she touched. Her sculpture is attributed to Ryan O'Reilly, 1926. Pleased by your success at finding his Dagger of Amon-Ra and his murderer, Dr. Pippin Carter now rests in peace. Pippin Carter's body was transported to Egypt by his cousin and now occupies a place of archaeological honor in the Temple of Amon-Ra in the Valley of the Kings. Due to your success at recovering the Dagger of Amon-Ra and finding the murderer, Wolf Heimlich continued as Chief of Security at the Leyendecker Museum. 2 months later, he was married to Dr. Olympia Miklos. 2 years after they were married, Wolf and Olympia had a child they named Morgana Wolf Heimlich. Having died in the course of this story, Watney Little's life of crime came to an abrupt end. As he was not a nice man, nobody missed him. Due to your success at recovering the Dagger of Amon-Ra and finding the murderer, Dr. Olympia Miklos married Wolf Heimlich, who continued as Chief of Security at the Leyendecker Museum. 2 years after they were married, Wolf and Olympia had a child they named Morgana Wolf Heimlich. As fond as he was of the Leyendecker, Ernie Leach noted in his will that he wanted his body donated to the museum. His body now resides in numerous small jars of alcohol, which will be placed on display in the new Hall of Internal Biology, adjacent to the Hall of Late Mammals. Dr. Ptah Tut Smith finally gave up on getting the Dagger of Amon-Ra returned to Egypt. However, once it completed its US and European museum tours, it was returned to the Cairo Museum anyway. So, several years later, Tut died a happy man, even though his death was the result of an Egyptian cobra bite. After losing his head in the museum, Ziggy found himself unable to continue his criminal career. His head has been preserved and is now on display in the Life Mask exhibit at the Leyendecker Museum. Ramses Najir continued his successful career as an accountant and as head of the secret Egyptian cult of Amon-Ra. With his strong high society ties, his accounting business made Ramses a millionaire in 15 years. Having died from a snake bite, the Countess Lavinia Waldorf Carlton did not live long enough to inherit any money from her last husband, Sterling. Thoroughly impressed by your success as a reporter, your editor, Sam Augustini, nominated you for a Pulitzer Prize and was present when you received your Citation of Valor from the police department. Sam retired 10 years later to become a gentleman cabbage farmer, fulfilling a secret lifelong dream.
Weird.
Pleased at your success, Crodfoller T. Rhubarb was happy to become your assistant at the New York Daily Register News Tribune. Henri Lemore, the coroner, continued his successful career studying dead bodies for the next 50 years, finally retiring in 1976 to tour with a rock band, the Ungrateful Dead. Low Fat continued in the laundry business, eventually opening a chain of low-fat Chinese laundries across the country and becoming a millionaire in the process. Former Detective Ryan Hanrahan O'Reilly was sentenced to 60 years in a state penitentiary. Having been a cop, O'Reilly found it hard to make friends in prison.
Yeah,
After your successful completion of the museum assignment, you started dating Steve Dorian. Thrilled with your success, John Bowe spent the rest of his life telling people what a wonderful daughter you were and how he had taught you everything you knew about criminology.
Thanks, Pops.
After your recovery of the Dagger of Amon-Ra, it went back on display at the Leyendecker Museum. The large amount of press coverage drew many patrons to the museum to see the dagger. After 2 years on display at the Leyendecker, the dagger exhibit continued on a tour of museums in the United States, Europe, and finally found its way back to the Cairo Museum in Egypt.
That's it. So as you can see, some of those epilogue things for the characters are the same, no matter how well you do with the coroner. But some are much better, like your dad not hating you and that kind of thing. And also you don't get murdered, so Oh boy. Here's this everyone's favorite song again. Yeah, these credits are kind of silly too. I don't know what that is. This guy pulling a giant gun. They clearly had some fun with this. If you watch Dr. Carter here, his eyes bug out, I think. Maybe not. Maybe it's a different time. Oh, it might be this time. Yeah, so that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me play it. You know, on this playthrough, it's kind of crazy. There he is. There he goes. Oh! Play peekaboo. Yeah, it's interesting playing it, knowing exactly what to do. You know, I played this so much when I was younger that I just remembered. It's all just like secondhand knowledge now. Like I said, I do think they fixed a lot of issues with the original version, because the version I originally played was the, you know, the DOS version, the disc version, whatever you want to call it, floppy disk. So no voices for one thing. Which, like, I did notice some of the things, like when there's the be safe, for example, when it's actually just like listed, it's not quite as obvious that that's a clue to open the safe. So I think the text version is almost better in some instances. There's some Raw worshippers throwing Ziggy's head around. But I like the game. I mean, I recognize, especially with Sierra, they have so many issues with the game-breaking mechanics, and you know, if you don't have this item, you can't win, and you can't go find it. And they improved on it a lot with this version. Like I said, even that boot, I remember, was like an infamous one. So infamous that they changed it. But even, you know, stuff like the smelling salts or the snake oil, there's certain things that the cheese, if you don't have for that final act, then you can't beat it, and there's no way to go get them. And it seems like such an easy fix, right? Where you can't progress unless you get the correct items. And future point-and-click games obviously do that much better. I recognize that the reason a lot of, especially Sierra games, did this early on was because they wanted people to buy their hint books, or they wanted to call the hint line. But for me, like as a kid, it was actually a really nice kind of bonding experience with my siblings, and my dad would play with us sometimes, and it was kind of fun to, like, you know, talk it out with each other and be like, okay, so what do we have to do to get past this part, do you think? You know, let's figure it out. And it's a lot of trial and error, but because of that, it's like ingrained into my brain how this all worked. So I don't have much else to say. I think it's a fun game. I do like the story a lot. I like the idea of finding the bodies and, you know, the kind of zoomed in, highly detailed versions of the bodies was always kind of cool. And since I was so young at the time, it was also kind of like, ooh, like I'm seeing something adult. So, like, that's kind of fun. But I do wish the resolution, like the solution, I should say, was a bit more nuanced. It wasn't just one person killing everybody, and it was mostly to cover another crime. It would have been kind of cool if there was, like, different people killing different people for different reasons, and they were all kind of skeezy, and you had to figure that part out. But, alas, it's still fun, and you know, this game holds a special place in my heart, so you can keep watching all the wow, Laura and Yvette were the same person. I think there's a lot of Sierra staff in this, similar to, I mean, Josh Mandel is famously, I think is the writer of this game, or one of the writers of this game as well, and he voiced King Arthur, King Graham in King's Quest V. It's kind of an infamous voice acting thing. King's Quest V has very, very bad voice acting, and it's mostly because they just got a bunch of Sierra staff to voice them. They didn't hire any professional voice actors. The Archaeologist song, yeah. The one we all love. But it is interesting how This one was kind of the same, like Josh Mandel, and I think Scott Murphy, who's one of the guys behind Space Quest. There's some other ones that I know. Jane Jensen, who's behind Gabriel Knight. I think she's coming up here. Maybe not. There's another Josh Mandel. Like he did a lot of voices for this game. There she is. Jane Jensen was the flapper. Hiya, doll. And Scott Murphy, miscellaneous people. Screams and moans, Pat Murphy. Good. But yeah, the voice acting in this game wasn't great either. So I'm not trying to say it was any good necessarily, but it's not quite as bad as King's Quest V in my opinion. It's pretty bad. I'll admit that. For great voice acting in a Sierra game, check out King's Quest VI, where they actually hired some great voice actors, including Robbie Benson, who voices the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, Disney's Beauty and the Beast. So there. Anyway, that's it. That's the end. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to do another game right away here. This time, I think I'm going to pick a game that I haven't played before. So it'll be another one like Heroine's Quest. Oh god, this fucking song is playing again. Let's see if we can get out of there. Oh, yep, it's gone. Everything's gone. So, thanks again, everybody. We'll see you in the next video. Sound off in the comments if you have any suggestions for games to play next. I have some ideas, but maybe you'll strike something that I like better. You never know. And we'll see you next time on Point Click Repeat. My name's Alan. Keep playing games. Bye-bye.